From the Funky Town Network. Sponsored by Lee's Book and Tea Shop. Welcome to the Barbershop, where local music people talk about local music stuff. I'm Matthew Burrows, your host. I have an excellent panel of guests today, starting on my left with...
Hannah, the singer of Yokio.
Yes, indeed. We also have...
I'm Patrick Higgins. I'm a freelance writer with the Fort Worth Weekly, and I play in a local band, too.
Which local band?
We're called Odelatron.
That's right. And we also have over here...
I'm Will Hancock, a songwriter from Fort Worth. I work for a great company here in Fort Worth, Wheelhouse Marketing. And, yeah.
Excellent. Very, very nice. I wanted to give a couple of mentions. We had a couple of local folks pass on here recently, one of which was Paul English, who was Willie Nelson's longtime drummer, who was from Fort Worth. And I felt like it would be remiss of me not to give him a rest in peace. He was a fine musician. He even got a song written for him by Willie. Also, a guy named Beard, who was a longtime bouncer over in Deep Ellum that had just been there for, I don't think anybody remembered a time when he wasn't there. And so we've kind of lost a few of them locally, and it almost, I wonder sometimes about generational shifts, like in music scenes, when some of the older guards start, leaving and the newer ones start picking up. My impression is that we've got enough new people that's not going to be a problem to fill. We always have the worries about who's going to fill their shoes and whatnot. But Fort Worth at this time, to me, seems like we've got an awful lot of people coming up.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, certain people, it takes longevity to kind of get that kind of legacy kind of about somebody, but I don't see any reason why a lot of the talent that's coming up these days can't, achieve that longevity and kind of take that mantle at some point.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think we've got, I've said this, I grew up around here, and this is the best time to be in Fort Worth that I can remember, music-wise. And I think that's still true. I don't know if that matches your experience.
Adapted well, yes. And now Fort Worth has, some notoriety,
right?
Which I think they always have, but...
We got some folks who are doing pretty well now.
Absolutely.
And some folks...
People we've shared the stage with.
Right, exactly. Crazy. That's the thing. Like, people are like, oh, yeah. Like, these are people I've been at open mics with Leon and whatnot, So, not that he's playing the open mics anymore, but... It's still kind of that. And some of us have been around longer than others. I don't know, you've been in the scene for, what?
Like 2 years now. 2 years. Yeah,
so,
pretty
new.
Your
impression of it, I would be curious to get your impression of it as far as, like, how it compares to...
I grew up in Fort Worth, but didn't really get into the scene till, 2 years ago. But I think I've noticed just, the mayor and the mayor getting involved, and Hear Fort Worth and Visit Fort Worth being these programs that want to help push these artists and creative people in Fort Worth. And so I feel like I got lucky sliding in at the right time.
Yeah, because that did not used to be here.
Yeah.
The city kind of wanted us to go away for a long time because we were making a lot of noise and people puking on the sidewalks and whatnot, and so it's kind of gotten a little, the governments have gotten a little more friendly with what we're doing, even though I must say we still need some good busking permissions.
I know.
That's something that is still pretty, every time I ask people what the busking regulations in Fort Worth are, nobody knows. It basically just seems to be up to whatever the particular cop on duty thinks.
Exactly.
It never seems to really be...
been there years ago, but it was kind of... There was others doing it,
right? And
nobody's ever said anything. Really.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, if you get people who don't care, then that's fine. But sometimes you get the ones who are like, you're bothering the businesses or whatnot, and there doesn't ever seem to be a clear cut law about it.
Austin, though.
Well, right. And maybe that's good that we don't have one, because maybe it would be restrictive. I don't know. But it always seems to me like that's one of the things. I think we, to a certain degree, I think Fort Worth kind of. Some of us aspire to be a music town, but that's one of the things that I feel like kind of holds it back from doing that, is when you're walking around, you don't see people on the sidewalk with guitars and guitar cases as much as I think you should, especially like Sundance Square. You'd think surely down there you would see some people busking, but I never do, and very rarely on West 7th you see them. You'll see them on Magnolia,
Yeah, I think if there was an area that was like conducive to it, it's probably around here.
Yeah.
It actually is not surprising to me at all that there aren't any in Sundance. That seems like a pretty tightly regulated area.
It is, but I think it's kind of dumb that it is, though. Like,
no, absolutely, yeah.
Like that seems like a great opportunity to showcase, because they're doing this thing where they'll pay your, here at Fort Worth, they'll pay your touring costs to go to some other city and talk about how great music in Fort Worth is. Well, why don't we just have them play for the tourists who are all down there on Sundance Square, and then they can see, that we have some talent.
I think so much of that is like, for whatever reason, there's like this pervasive stigma with busking that it's just like they're bums,
Yeah.
And
except for the fact that they're actually working.
You retrain people to lose that impression,
Right.
Because they're, artists performing and.
Right.
For whatever you can spare.
Well, if you were just shaking your cup, that's one thing. But you're actually playing tunes and I don't know. I put that in a different quality. Maybe I'm weird, but I don't put that in the same thing as panhandling. I guess it doesn't feel like that to me.
No, and I don't think any of us. I mean, especially
of course we're all biased. So
right, yeah. Your average, teased-haired, lady and her, diamond
Karen,
cuts on
you're
a
talking
Saturday
about Karen?
night. Yeah. She comes from a different place, maybe. So.
I know. Yeah, I understand that. And I've heard that. Well, I don't want them, begging on the street. I'm like, they're not really begging, though.
Right.
Like, they're. I think they're providing a service. Well, like when you go to New York and you're in the subways or whatnot, like people are doing. That's, if you're waiting for your train, that's far better to have something there that's entertaining than to just stand there staring at people. In my humble opinion,
maybe it's just conditioning.
Probably, yeah. We're not used to it. We're not used to it around here. We really haven't had that in here, and I think that's something we're missing. But I've said that about 1 million times on this show, so and the tens of people who are listening go, yeah, So, so this was a weird thing that came up from a songwriting perspective. There was this group of people. And I haven't verified this yet, but it sounds like it's plausible. Somebody got a MIDI program and supposedly came up with all the possible melodies that you can come up with using a computer, device, and copyrighted them and then made them public domain. So that in theory, all of the possible melodies that were made by the 12 notes that we have in the Western canon are now public domain. I don't think that's going to stand up for a minute in court. But it is a funny thought because I always think that every time I write a song, I always think about how many people am I ripping off here?
Right.
Because I know I'm ripping off somebody.
Like, this sounds familiar.
And the trick is not to not
song.
rip somebody off. It's not to be heard by the person who you ripped off.
Especially if it's the Rolling Stones.
Right, especially if it's somebody who's got some pockets, But like I've ripped off friends of mine who have ripped me off too because we just like each other's tunes and we're not making any money off of them anyway. But it's different when you start getting cash involved. Like years ago, we did Folsom Prison Blues, and I went and looked it up to pay the royalty, and it's split between Johnny Cash and Gordon Jenkins. Well, they didn't co-write it. What happened was Gordon Jenkins wrote a song, and Johnny Cash kind of riffed on it to make Folsom Prison Blues. And then once that became successful, Jenkins sued him, and so now the deal was they split it so they could have double credit or split credit. And because music is like that, you're going to be borrowing from something, and you may not even be conscious of what you're borrowing from. Sometimes,
not at all.
Especially you got X number of chords, like you say, X 12 notes in the whole thing. How likely is it really that you've come up with something that nobody else has done?
Well, I found that like really fascinating with country music, especially in its development. There were a handful of common melodies that were just recycled through songs, over and over again, and how do you find who gets credit for that? And
a lot of those people are long dead.
And especially because like. So many at the time, they weren't documented in any way,
Well, they also weren't making money off of it.
Right.
I think that's what changes. So, like, for instance, a lot of those blues melodies that Led Zeppelin grabbed, at the time, they'd been around for years and years, but nobody had made any money off of them. And so suddenly they're making money. Well, now people are going, well, I actually wrote that, And, well, okay, you wrote it, but you also borrowed it from this guy, and it's hard to trace the lineage of those things. Talk about stuff like the Amazing Grace, I read a piece about that, about how the only reason why it's that melody now, it used to be you would have lyrics were on one page and then you had melodies that were on other page, and so the song leader in any worship service would say, okay, we're going to do these lyrics, but we're going to do it to this melody. And so that song, those lyrics had been done to a bunch of different melodies before, but they found a melody that it worked with and a lot of people liked, so it gets called that now. But go back and far enough and people were doing it to a totally different melody. And
that's
so
such a good tool as a songwriter, though, to do that.
Isn't
with
it?
Ice, whatever song you want, just mixing it up and doing different patterns, because something original will come out of that.
Yeah, well, that's kind of why
even
I like
though the chord thing and all that. And
yeah, that's why I like the guy that takes major key songs and puts them into minor. There's a guy on YouTube who does that, and I think it's pretty awesome because it kind of helps you to reimagine those songs. Like he did a "Girls Just Want to Have Fun," made it in a minor key, and it's all kind of dark and creepy. Yeah. And I think that's pretty cool to hear a song reimagined that way. And they have these basically song boxes that some of these labels use, where they'll pop out 3 or 4 songs that the computer wrote, and then they'll send them to lyricists to try to come up with something that goes with that. And on first look, that kind of makes you, as a songwriter, you kind of shrink back and go, "Oh my God, that's horrifying." But at the same time, you think, I don't know, maybe send me some of those. Like what could I come up with this thing that the computer spat out?
Yeah.
Maybe I could do something cool with it. I mean, there's all different kinds of ways of creating. It doesn't necessarily have to be the way everybody else has done it.
Yeah, everyone's got their different method of writing, and it changes too.
But the thing is I write different types of songs now than I did 20 years ago, and so
your process has evolved.
Yeah, it has, and it's sometimes for the better, and sometimes you kind of wish you could remember how you used to do it, because sometimes good things came out of that, but then you hit a wall and you can't really push forward until you try something else, until you morph. But I'm curious to see, like, these guys who have supposedly public domained all of these melodies. I have a hard time thinking of that as being enforceable in any kind of realistic way, for the same reason that stuff like BMI and ASCAP have such a hard time.
Yeah.
Because they can't be everywhere and hear all the songs and know, like Shotgun Friday, we had played a beer festival, and they made us sign a thing saying that we wouldn't do any of the tunes that we had copyrighted and gotten BMI representation from. Well, if the BMI rep was there, he wouldn't know. Like, our stuff is not popular enough that he would know automatically, oh, we represent those tunes. Like, you have to have the institutional knowledge to know, oh, that's one of my songs, or you have to have the device, I guess. I guess they can Shazam it and do it that way. But if you're doing a different, does that work?
I don't think Shazam would pick it up.
Does that work at a live gig? Does that work at a live gig? Does Shazam work that way?
It depends on how close they're nailing it, I guess.
I guess that's true. They're trying to play it note for note, maybe it'd pick it up. But I think it picks up more on sound waves, on the shapes of waves, than on, like, it doesn't listen to a lyric, I don't think, and go, I think that's that
on the
song.
Frequencies.
Digital sound wave thumbprint.
That's my impression. I know nothing, but I'm
actually really curious, like the claim that they've devised every combination of melody. Well, like, what defines a melody?
Well,
is it limited to a specific number of bars, or time signatures? Like, I'm fascinated by this.
That plays a role. It's what it is it's notes in relation to each other. The same reason why you can play the same song in a million different keys, not a million, but 12. I can, maybe the original is in E, but I can play it in A, because what it's about is the relation of the notes to the root.
Right.
And so, you wouldn't necessarily, you could do it in 3/4 if it were originally 4/4, and is it the same melody, or are you adapting it for that? There's still variations you can use and kind of make it unique, but I think it's kind of an interesting bit of rebellion there that I don't know if it'll accomplish what they want.
Right, yeah.
Because there's an awful lot of lawyers in the world. And they got to make money somehow. But,
the melody's just it's like the climax of the story you've been telling.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, and
it's more
also
about feeling than like...
And that's my thing, too, is that you can do... So, like, if you listen to... Not to beat that horse, but, like, if you listen to like Cohen's version of Hallelujah, it does one thing, whereas Buckley's version does another thing. And I think everybody who plays a particular song is going to give it their own little English on it. I say that about Bob Dylan songs all the time. Like I like to hear other people cover them because then I can kind of figure out what the melody was supposed to be. Because, because often he'll kind of talk through the melody. Yeah, and I'm like, but then I hear somebody cover it that's singing full voice. I'm okay. Now I see what that was trying to do. But then is that just their interpretation, or is that what the original interpretation was? Who knows? I don't know. I find it interesting in kind of a very, very nerdy way.
Well, yeah, I mean, Dylan especially is one of those songwriters. They've been covered a trillion times, and you can breathe new life into a Dylan song that I mean, Hendrix and at all. But I totally get what you're saying there. Yeah, you can, and I think reinterpretation really is the soul of covers. Really, honestly. Because I think that honestly is what separates when people talk about cover bands and they kind of dog cover bands, which kind of sucks because I've been in a few and I thought we had a lot of fun. But the claim I think is that you're all derivative. You're not, but that's only if you do it note for note the way that the original artist did it. If you do it like we had a lot of fun doing the Fort Worth Rock Assembly where we kind of did the tributes to all these various, but of course nobody played them straight. I mean everybody kind of jacked them up their own particular way. That kind of makes it interesting to me, because I'm not any good at sounding like other people, so it's beneficial to me.
That's got to be cool to have your song covered, though, and hear someone else interpret it differently.
When that happened to me, it kind of blew my mind, because Chris Curtis was the first one that ever covered me, and it kind of was like, bro, like hearing the thing that you wrote that you've only ever heard your own voice sing. And then now he's in Sam the Lion now, and they do this big, huge version of it. And I've kind of retired it. I've kind of been like, I'm not going to play this anymore because they've kind of owned this song now. Yeah. But I think that's one of the best feelings you can have is to hear somebody play your song. And I'm hopefully you'll hear that at some point.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
I think at some point somebody will be like, that's not a good tune. I'm going to try this, But it's weird though because you fight two different things because how you originally wanted it to sound, but they're probably going to take a liberty with it, and you have to kind of be open-minded enough to be like, oh, okay, that's okay. Definitely. Like Chris changed a couple of the lyrics, and at first I was like, what?
Aww.
But then I was like, okay, for him it makes sense to change this word, So you kind of have to be less, and it's hard as a creator because sometimes you have a vision of what you feel like something should be, and it's real hard when that vision is not the one that you originally came up with. But I like Rebecca Joswiak was talking about that. They had somebody remix a lot of Signals and Alibis tunes, and they came back, and it was kind of disorienting at first, kind of like to hear the songs they had kind of taken them in pieces and put the pieces in different places. And it was kind of like, whoa, what it's like a Naked Lunch type of, remix blender thing. But it worked. I think it ended up being pretty good. I don't know. I'm getting better at not drawing strict lines on what's good and what's not good. So we're trying the new microphone setup here, and I have to admit that last week when I was playing a show in Dallas, and they offered me the club mic, it kind of occurred to me for a minute the various headlines that are going around about the coronavirus and whatnot. And I normally am not like a germaphobe for the most part, but I also remembered a seminar. You remember Dre Edmondson? It's a local sound guy. He did a little seminar at the Fort Worth Music Co-op years ago talking about how you should always bring your own mic to a gig. And to demonstrate, he opened up somebody else's mic and showed you what the crap that was in it. He picked the worst one that he found.
I don't want to speak into this mic anymore.
I know, right? See, cleaned all of those before we could. But
thank you.
But it was kind of one of those things where I was like, oh my God, am I just being paranoid because the media is telling me, that we're all going to die?
I mean, it's better to be safe than sorry.
But it's not something that I normally spend a lot of time worrying about. But I had thought about it. And the pros that I know, the people who do a lot of touring around, they tend to bring their own microphones, and part of that is because they know what sounds good on their voice, and so they don't want to risk getting into a place and somebody's got a mic that doesn't fit with what they're doing. But there's also, I think, probably the germ issue, so that's why I gave you all condensers so you don't have to get right up on it. But I don't know, have you been conscious of that?
Yeah, definitely. I remember lots of times seeing the artists before me playing and just like spit flying in the lights. I'm like, oh my God, I have to sing in it next. Gotta bring a washcloth up there.
I've had exactly the same. Got a guy who had a harmonica and he was just kind of doing this right up on it. I was like, I don't know, I should have brought mine. And now I do, just as a matter of course, I just do it. But makes me nervous sometimes. Do you have the fear, Will? Does that happen to you?
I don't have a fear, but it's something to think about for sure.
He does now, yeah.
I'm not invincible, so.
Well, no, none of us are, certainly.
But yeah.
Yeah, it actually.
I have a pretty good immune system, I think.
Okay, well, good.
So.
Well, and there's the argument to be made that you're strengthening it by using other people's microphones because the more germs you get.
There you go.
You get resistance to, the better. That's how we defeat the bacteria. No, I don't know about that.
Much to everybody's benefit, I don't sing, so
okay, well,
I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, this one of the things that had kind of. So before each one of these shows, one of the things I do is I go and research a lot of local music press just to kind of see what's going on, what we might be able to talk about. And I kind of found a dearth of things this last few times. Not that there's not writing going on, but it tends to be focused on individual bands, profiles of individual bands, which is nice. But there's less kind of general music news going around. And it seems to me, I started the show about 5 years ago. It seemed like there was a lot more kind of just general music news sections of like the Weekly and the Observer and even like Central Track and one. And they still have those things, but they seem to be smaller to me. Is that your observation as a member of the local music press? Is that your observation?
To be honest, man, it's really kind of something we are trying to make a concerted effort to break out of, because you're right. I mean, most of what we do are kind of artist features,
which are nice.
Even Hearsay, which is more kind of a editorial kind of column, has become kind of a feature junior just because of the wealth of like talent around,
right? Exactly.
And we can't get to everything.
Yeah.
And I would like that, and it's something that we're consciously trying to address because. Even though there's such variation amongst the artists around town, you get to be where like the paper seems kind of formulaic with within the section and
Well, and it's also the section is of course smaller than it used to be because there's been and that's another thing that I wondered about is maybe the shrinkage of staff maybe makes it where they just can't be as much coverage as we would like.
Yeah, I mean, a little quick hit section would be really cool, though.
Yeah.
And easier to write, to be honest.
Probably. Well, because I mean, and then like you'll still find that in like Central Track will do that, and Observer will do it, but for the most part, even though the Observer's music section is still pretty huge.
Yeah.
But even so, most of it is individual band profiles for the most part. And as an artist, I have no problem with individual band profiles, but it would also be kind of nice to have just kind of a hey, what's going on generally type of thing.
I think some of that maybe just like, and this may be a peek behind the curtain too much, maybe the age of the routine writers. Steve is still super plugged in.
Yeah,
and he's out and around. I'm not so much.
We had this conversation with Eric Griffey last time he was on the show
really?
because he was talking about the fact that a lot of the writers in the local scene now have kids and families, and so they're just not around where stuff is going on as much, and you try to stay plugged in as much as possible, but I know how it is.
Well, without like social media, there'd be no way I would have any idea what was going on with anybody.
Well, and you wonder if that's kind of changed the process, because that used to be the thing that would happen is you would kind of get writers age out of the pool, and then you'd get the new ones in. And that doesn't seem to be happening very much. And I don't know if part of it is just simply because the press in general is shrinking.
That's
so
probably some of it.
There's fewer people getting into it.
I would like to shout out to a couple of writers that we've been featuring more and more recently. Tyler and Simone. They're both
Simone Carter.
Both super talented, and we're trying to work them in more. Because just a different voice. Obviously they're younger and have their ears to things that maybe we don't. So
right. And I'm particularly proud of Simone because she's the daughter of a friend of mine.
Oh, cool.
And the mighty little Jack Melody, who everybody should listen to if they can. But yeah, Simone is I'm real proud that she's ended up being as good a writer as she is.
Yeah, she's great. Yeah, I'm super pumped to have her.
And then you kind of have writers too who do more than one paper now, because it's kind of hard to stick to, like, you'll get, does Watkins still write for the Weekly at all, or it's mostly just been
Tyler writes for the Observer a little bit too. But I don't have the time to do anything but what I've got. So
well, and that's the thing, you only have it. I mean, I guess it's beneficial that the music section now is smaller because it's quicker to fill it than it used to be. But
sometimes we struggle, though. I mean, there's like either too much or we've kind of gone through everything we can, and we're just like, okay, we got a lot of holes. Somehow we always make it work, but
well, it's kind of like like I always said, Saturday Night Live is like 30 minutes too long. Because they end up kind of throwing their trash sketches in there with the good ones, and it's like sometimes the music sections in the past, I'm talking about like mid 90s and whatnot, were a little heavy. Like it was and a lot of it was basically just ranting. There was an aesthetic a few years ago. I don't know if it's coming to a close, but there was the era of the really cranky music critic who hated everything, as personified generally by like Robert Wolanski and I see less of that now. In fact, I've heard people complain about it, like, every time they write up a band, it's the best band that you ever heard, and
I kind of struggle with this because, like, I mean, in all honesty, I don't love everything that I cover, but I don't feel it's my place to be like a tastemaker. I have my own taste.
But that's funny because that's unusual. That didn't used to be the case. I guess it used to be the case that was what music critics felt like that was their job, was to filter.
I mean, I'm confident in my taste, and I think like it's really good. But at the same time, like, who am I to say that other people shouldn't be able to get something? I mean, we don't cover music that's bad. I mean, there's a reason why we're covering everything. It may not be to my taste, but
I think that's part of it. Is that I think because there's so much, I think if you're going to spend time doing something, you're not going to spend it on something you hate. You're gonna spend time writing about stuff that you like.
Well, even if it's something I hate, like there's something there that other people can appreciate.
Sure.
Or else we probably wouldn't be writing about it. So
yeah, that's just interesting to me because I came up in the era of like where you could get whole articles, 2-page articles that were nothing but the guy hating on the band. Like it was kind of a sport. Like to find a local punching bag and just punch the crap out of it.
Yeah, I just couldn't imagine.
Like Deep Blue Something came in for a lot of that back in the day. Like it was basically, there was just, it became kind of a sport to see like who could pillory the local hits as much as possible.
Well, I try not to kind of fluff anything either. I kind of just try to
like if you don't
explain best I know what something is and let people make their own determinations.
And I like that. I appreciate that y'all are doing that. I just think it's still kind of funny to me. Because I saw it in the old age.
Well, who's the cat that has like the YouTube channel with the glasses, the bald guy? He covers like all the great records. But
can't think of the name.
Anyway, not to plug that dude, but it's just like. What makes you think that you know any better than anybody else?
Well, there's a certain amount of fun to be had in making fun of stuff that you don't like. But at the same time, you always have to remember, well, that's those are people too, like those, and somebody likes it.
Right.
I think it's funny when people spend a lot of time criticizing really popular acts, and you have to realize that there's millions of people who like that thing. Even if you hate it, You know, there's bands who are incredibly popular that I have no idea why they're popular, because I can't stand them. But clearly somebody's getting something out of it, and it took me it took me basically most of my 20s to figure out that you can't tell people that they don't like something.
Well, I mean, you can, but like, should you?
Well, yeah, you can tell them, you're not going to convince them, though.
Yeah.
You know, like you can stand there and go, you shouldn't like this. This is terrible. They're still going to like it, whether you.
Maybe that's just age, man. Like,
it is.
To a point where you're just like, you know, I'm fine with whatever. Just do you. It's cool. Like,
yeah.
You know,
well, and also just understand.
Much more opinionated as a 20-year-old about music for sure.
Yeah. Well, because I think there's also fewer things that you've heard at that time too. Because like when I hear a new piece of music now, I'm fitting it in with everything I've ever heard over 46 years, and so I'm able to kind of see sides of it. Where when I was like 23 or something, you know, I had only heard X number of records, and so like it was either the greatest thing that had ever happened or it was crap.
Right. Yeah.
There was no in between in there. You know. And I still see that sometimes. You know, people are like, oh, these guys suck. You know, I was like, well, they don't suck. They're just not your thing. Like, you know, you don't have to hate them if you don't like them. I don't know. I'm not going to ask everybody to opine on the bands they hate locally. It does happen though. Like you wind up sometimes on bills, and you're kind of like, oh man, you know.
Yeah, that's tough. I'm sure that's most bands' reactions when they play with us. But
no. You know, that's the thing is like, and sometimes it's like beef you don't even know about. Like I've had it happen where I've invited people on this show, and they've been like, well, who else is on it? And I'll go, oh, it's them. Go, oh, no. No, we're not going to be on this show. You know, it's like, okay. So, you know, I don't think I had that happen here, but it's surprised me sometimes, like people who I didn't realize that there was a thing. And then in that case, it's not really about the music. It's about
you're letting something else stop you from
there's a personality
performing.
issue that's doing that. And I've had that with bands like there was they're not even around anymore, but we used to open a lot for this other band, you know, years ago, and they were always kind of crappy to us, you know, like for no good reason. And so and it wasn't that we disliked no, but it's like, it's not that there was anything wrong with their music. It was just like, you know, it was a personality conflict.
Yeah.
It's kind of like,
You're not very fun to hang out with.
Yeah. It's kind of like we would all kind of just look at each other like this, and I don't know. I don't like that vibe. And
They're out there.
Oh, no, they are.
Yeah.
And I do think that Fort Worth, generally speaking, is pretty good at everybody at least trying to get along.
Yeah.
For the most part. Even if you don't care for what the other person is doing, there's no reason to be a jerk about it, you know.
Yeah, I feel like for the most part, everyone's really supportive of one another.
Yeah. Well, and I think that it's actually something that kind of differentiates us from Dallas a little bit, because I do think there's still a lot of competitiveness in Dallas that ends up getting kind of nasty sometimes.
It does feel very cliquey there.
Yeah.
Like, I played shows there with a bunch of people at once, and they were very nice to me, like face front, but they didn't really know me, so they didn't, like, I could feel I wasn't welcome in the circle.
Yeah,
Whereas here in Fort Worth, I could walk up to a stranger, and they're like, oh, hey, have a beer, let's talk. Yeah. So it's different.
I think it's because there's a lot of cocaine over there. I don't know if that's what it is.
It always comes back to cocaine.
Yeah, most things do. Most things in the music industry at some point come back to cocaine. But no, I think that there are ways to appreciate music that are kind of intellectual more so than emotional. Like there's some songs I don't have a connection with, but I can understand why they're important to somebody.
Yeah.
Right.
I can be like, okay, I'm not feeling this, but I kind of get why you're feeling it. And sometimes it has to do with when it hit you. You know, like if you heard it when you were 14 and it was like hitting you at a really sensitive time in your life, then to you that song is gold forever. Mm-hmm. Or you can never listen to it again, one of the two, you know. Mm-hmm. But to someone else who didn't have that experience, you know, it doesn't mean that at all to them. It's just a song. And so it's kind of the things that get called classics. Sometimes I'm always surprised about that it became a classic, but then I realized that it maybe hit a generation at a time when it was something important was happening and so it kind of became an anthem for that. And I don't know how you ever quantify that, what should become a classic and what shouldn't, but and then you don't get to, because people just people either like something or they don't. It kind of organically becomes one or it doesn't, and you can tell which ones they are because they're the ones that the jukebox keeps getting loaded up with. This is something that was funny to me, that I went to the Polydogs single release party or video release party thing, and they had branded hot dogs at the post for each of the members. And I'm sensing a missed opportunity here that I think do you think more Fort Worth bands should have specialized foods that were...
Yes, because
like
Quaker City Night Hawks has queso.
That's
I was
right.
just thinking about this today. I was like...
Chilamundo does like grilled cheese.
Yeah.
So like, do you have a...
I don't, but I had an idea today, and
Okay.
I kind of don't want to give it away.
Okay, all right. Well,
It just came to me today, though, so that's really weird.
Because I think, I don't know what the Odelatron food would be. I don't know if you have
an Odelatron is actually a type of squid. It's a scientific
be
name.
get the calamari, okay.
So yeah, maybe calamari.
Oh my god.
Okay.
Although, like,
That's harder to do.
I'm like for any sort of clever marketing, thing, because like an EPK or whatever is just kind of boring, and there's a billion of them, so you've got to kind of find some way to get your name out there. Like we have a phone number like that you can call, and it's like an old 900 number from the 90s, and we're each giving stupid facts or telling stupid stories, or I don't even know what the phone number is, or I'd plug it right now, but
they Might Be Giants used to have that. They used to have dial a song, and you could call, and there would be a new song every week or something, and that's kind of fun.
Is that the Colin Oates? Have you ever heard this?
Oh no, I didn't know that.
It's the same thing, but it's like they just play Hall & Oates music, so it's great.
I don't know. Do we have a Will Hancock food, a specific?
I'm working on that.
Okay, all right.
I'm working on like some pedals so you can play Words with Friends on stage.
Oh,
while
wow.
you're playing guitar. I'm gonna get there. It'll be a lot of it's a lot of pedals.
It's good for like those 3-hour gigs, like.
Man, we're hungry. I'm gonna go eat that food.
Yeah, I'm about this Chilamundo grilled cheese, man. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, years ago I saw there was a punk band, and they had the standard lineup, but then they had one guy in the band whose job was to make ham sandwiches and throw them out to the crowd.
Oh my gosh.
And like that guy was he's the reason I still remember that band.
Yeah,
Like the rest
exactly.
of the band was fairly forgettable, but I remember the guy with the sandwiches.
Like, it wouldn't surprise me to see that where it's like the guy's responsibility was to give like members of the band ham sandwiches, but to pass them out to the crowd. That's great.
Give them to the audience. I think that's kind of a job security type of thing. It's kind of like the guy with the T-shirt cannon.
Yeah.
That some of the bigger
Well,
ones
those are
have.
fun. The guns.
Yeah. I haven't ever shot one, but I'm
either.
told it's kind of fun
It looks really fun.
to do that. I mean, I don't know. You probably don't want to do that like in,
Close proximity.
yeah, you don't want to do it in the types of places I'm generally playing. Could you do that in the moon? Could you shoot a T-shirt cannon?
I think
from?
you just like aim up, let it,
Yeah, so
the
just
arch.
like bounces off the ceiling.
Kinda-
Yeah.
land in somebody's birdie
Anybody.
bop. Yeah, that'd be great. No, I don't know. I that's one thing I've noticed a lot too is there's been a lot more bars opening up that have food in them now that didn't used to be the
Great
case.
idea.
I think that's fantastic because people are drinking.
Uh-huh.
And you kind of don't want anybody to, because I've always had people do that, be like, oh, I'm so drunk, I wish I had some food, and they don't have it, and you get to like Twilight and you can get a 8-foot freaking po' boy or whatever, and it would be nice if more places were doing that. There are more places doing that. The Post is doing it. What was there? Was it? Well, the Moon's got
The Moon's doing
Oh,
the
are they
birdie,
doing food now?
Birdie
birdie
Bop
bop
thing
or
now.
something. Yeah,
that's right,
They're
yeah.
really good. And like being a performer at these venues
Yeah.
with the food is great because
Yeah.
you don't
Right.
eat before. You
Well,
got a bunch of stuff going on, and now
I can't tell
eat
you
there.
how many times I've gotten to the gig and been like, oh crap, I forgot to eat.
Yeah.
Because I was focused on
Busy.
getting all my crap
Yeah.
together to get to the show. And then I'm like, well, now I'm hearing people are buying me shots, and that's going to become a problem here at some point. We went to Memphis, recording at Sun, and freaking hadn't had anything to eat, and so our washboard player is sitting there just drinking these temptresses, like these beers, and eventually we're just like, oh, we don't have any food, and we start knocking stuff around. Like, you don't want to do that in Sun Studio, but yeah, I think it's a good development. It's certainly better than the candy machines that
right.
Like if they have a Snickers.
Oh,
I mean,
Funyuns.
Funyuns. Nobody at a bar should be eating Funyuns in close proximity with each other and trying to pick people up and whatnot.
It was always the 7-Eleven next door to the rec room when it was there.
Oh yeah,
and you'd always like load in and then hit the 7-Eleven for
so you
gas
get the
station
quality
hot dogs.
food there. You get the gas station.
The gas station hot dogs. Maybe use their restroom because the one at the rec was not so
it was
great.
absolutely wrecked. Yeah. That's somebody who had said that the other day. Like that's a good way to boost your immune system, is occasionally eating a gas station hot dog just to toughen it up a little bit.
Well, you just get the ones that are nice and they have that like kind of leathery texture because they've been in, that way
it seals the bacteria in, so you can't.
And a lot of places will just bring food truck for
which is cool,
and I see it all the time.
Yeah, well,
and it's just little rundown food trucks, but man, sometimes
don't
it's
need
the
much.
best.
Yeah, you don't need much. Well, and then you have the places that take it to the next level, like the truck yard, which has a bunch of food trucks kind of arrayed around it and a little stage thing in the middle, which is a pretty cool concept. Just to go ahead, and that's funny to me too, because when I was a kid, like food trucks were thought of as like that's the last place you wanted to eat. They called them the Roach Coach, like it was
Right.
It was really crappy stuff. But now we have the artisanal food trucks, which are a different type
all
of
the
animal.
rage right now.
I know. It's and some of them are getting big enough that they can open physical locations and things like that. So.
Yeah, Taco Heads started that way.
Yeah, and it's. Well, and Haim, I think, started as a food truck, and so it's kind of
Hurtado. I guess they're in Arlington, but
yeah, that's kind of cool though. That's a busking opportunity right there. Play outside the food truck.
Oh,
see,
they would love that.
I'm gonna try that now. Find me a good food truck and do it like that. That would make certain people happy.
You know what a good busking spot is?
What's that?
It's not in Fort Worth. If you go to South Lake Town Square,
Really?
nobody will say anything to you. There's good corners to find some good acoustics, and there's rich people walking around everywhere.
Oh,
and a bunch of
that's
them are
what you need.
kids with cash their parents
There you
gave
go.
them.
There you go.
They're like, yeah, I want to give you money. It's great.
Okay. Good. That's a good.
little secret.
That's a good tip. I hadn't thought about that. We did a thing at the Dallas Truck Yard, and they had a team of these cheerleaders that were in town from Atlanta, and they had just won this big cheer competition, and so they were all hyped, and they dumping money in the tip jar like crazy, these teenagers. We had to kind of shame the adults, like, you guys, these kids have already given us more than you guys have. But you don't want to necessarily shame your audience like that, but
No.
sometimes it's fun.
One time I was busking in South Lake, and a limo of that Sweet and Sassy company drove by.
Oh,
Do you know
yeah.
what that is?
Mhm.
It's like that, like little girls get ready for parties and they do their
Yes.
hair, and they take them on a limo ride, and these girls are hanging out the window, and they see me playing guitar, and this one girl has like a wand in her hand. She's like, "Can we give her money?" And I'm like, "Yes, please pull over."
That's what you got to do. Wow, that's a thought.
know.
Yeah. Was that in South Lake also?
That was in South Lake.
Okay, I'm missing my opportunity there. That's
And you'll meet other buskers out there.
I'm sure if they figured that out also.
are they
I guess.
territorial about it?
No, actually, everyone's like pretty good with sharing. Like some
Okay,
guy will
good.
come after me, and I'm like, okay, I'll let you go on, and vice
Yeah,
versa.
because I ran into that in New York a little bit, which people who had the same spot for years or something, and if you got there before they did, they would like, "Hey man, that's my spot," and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Well, you don't have like a deed or anything to it."
No, I think everyone there is very much first come, first serve. You get it.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. That's good because I don't wake up early, so yeah, not
yeah.
having to fight for it is nice. Well, if we were going to find out more about the Yokio business and all that,
Yeah.
where do we go on the interwebs?
So we have a website now,
Okay.
yokiomusic.com. And it'll take you to like links to all of our streaming platforms where our EP is streaming, and we're going to have some new singles coming up too.
Okay.
And then you can follow us on Instagram at Yokio Official, and Yokio Babe is my personal one. And Facebook,
Yeah.
Twitter,
Just
all
look
of
up
that.
the
Yeah.
OK. Where do we go to find out more about your adventures, Mr. Higgins?
So yeah, FortWorthWeekly.com. You can read my stuff there. And for Odelatron, Facebook, we have a new double single coming out in April.
Cool.
That we're super pumped about. So yeah.
Nice. And for Mr. Will Hancock, where do we go?
Oh
on your web
man,
for
you
that
know
kind
what?
of
Just
thing?
right now, I still have my band side on Facebook. It's Will
Okay.
Hancock and the Blood Moon Bandits,
Very nice.
and we have some shows coming up actually. Woodshed,
Cool. Are you playing Woodshed?
May, June, July.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
About 6. It's got books random shows, so
Okay.
I gladly take them.
Jones? Maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's random. I like him.
I'm super random too.
Well, one of the things we like to do on the Barbershop is to have local artists cover a local artist. We are having Mr. Will Hancock. Who are you covering there?
You know what? I'm gonna do a Garrett Owens song.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Met him just years ago, and
Yeah.
we all just sat in awe at this little dive bar, and like, man, he's gotta
And he's
make it somehow.
He's
yeah.
He's blowing up. He's
Oh, sure. He's
pretty well.
amazing.
We had him on the show back before he was a thing, and he ain't returned my calls since then. No, I'm
we
kidding.
talk
I'm kidding.
infrequently,
Yeah.
but I had like one showcase artist when I was doing like a Red Goose for years, and he was the only one who came.
No.
It was like the third, fourth, and then I was like, I'm squashing that. Nobody's coming. But he came.
No, Garrett's a solid
he was
guy.
the best, yeah.
Garrett's a solid guy. Well, that's cool. So Will's going to play us a tune.
Grab a guitar.
Yeah, and make sure to visit our sponsor, Lee's Book and Tea Shop. That's where we are doing this this performance. This is not a performance. This is a podcast. And also find us on the Face Space, Barbershop Fort Worth. And check out all of our guests online, wherever you may find them. And Mr. Hancock's got his
It's been quite a while.
Been quite a while? Has
Since
it?
I've done this one for sure.
That'll be
Usually
entertaining.
somewhere different, but just do it open here.
Which Garrett Owen tune is this?
This is Razor Blade Families.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Mr. Will Hancock.
I'm growing tired of the way we never sleep. I'm growing tired of the way we never speak. So why don't we stare at ourselves in dirty mirrors? It's one way to avoid our reflections getting clearer. Come home late enough to only say goodnight. You stick around long enough to only say goodbye. You got a razor blade family, I got a shotgun story. We got what you'd call sadness, but it ain't sad, you know. Blue walls and blank stares. The psych ward loves me too. You can learn it's late. I already had you. Blue walls and blank stares. The psych ward loves me too. You can burn it's late. I already had you. You got a razor blade family, I got a shotgun story. We got what you'd call sadness, but it ain't sad, you know.
Yeah.
The Barbershop is sponsored by Lee's Book and Tea Shop. Visit them at 120 St. Louis Avenue in Fort Worth.